open that up. Position. We'll do it. How about we just crank it up to 8? See if 8 looks good. Save that. Why would it be going to the next person? Using unit.transform.position after the kill.
Oh boy, that was janky. Dakota Snow, hey man, welcome. Cool. I've got to kill Zach's stream now. Right, how'd I do that? Goodbye. There. All right, peeps, how we doing? Happy Sunday to everyone. I need to stretch the old streaming muscles a bit more. I am completely lost with what I'm doing. Hopefully you can see and hear me. Cool. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump straight on in. So for those of you who don't know, I made a game last year called Editar, which is a kind of level builder, 2D platformer, sharing code, speedrunning type game. It was kind of, we used it for a competition to do some level design stuff. The basic premise is you can build yourself a level and then play it, and once you're happy with it, you share it with other people, and you try and figure out who the fastest person is to complete it. Silver J, good to see you. Were you not watching Zach? I didn't see you in this chat. There we go. Cool. But anyway, long story short, we built this game and it was really fun. But one problem with the game was that I didn't really have enough time to add more stuff to it. And I used a bunch of third-party assets so that I couldn't actually share the code because I didn't have the legal right to share the code. So instead, what I've decided to do is we've got a rebuild going on at the moment of the game, completely 100% open sourced. So this version is going to have no third-party assets that aren't licensed to be redistributed, and we're going to do it all ourselves, and we're going to do it as a community project so that literally anyone who wants to can get involved, work on the code, work on the art, work on the music, whatever you want to do. We're going to do some code review and everything. We're going to do some pairing up and some mentoring for people who don't really know exactly how Unity and everything else works. And it's going to be a lot of good fun. So if this sounds interesting, check out the GitHub repo and check out the Game Dev Field Guide, both of which are useful links. Well, there's links anyway, so you can kind of see the repo for the project. I've been working on the wiki to make sure that there's as much information as possible on the actual GitHub, but if that falls short and people don't exactly figure out how everything works, join the Discord. We've got a channel in there. There's plenty of people to chat to. We'll divvy up some work and we'll get going. So that's the plan, at least. We've got a lot of interest so far, but I've realized that for a lot of game devs, they might not be super used to using GitHub and how contributing code and sharing code works when you're working with a remote team. So I thought I'd do a quick stream. I'll go through the basics of how to pull code, push code, create pull requests, that sort of stuff, and try and help people figure out how they can work on the project. So with that in mind, let's make a start. Cool. So the very first thing is the GitHub repo is here. So you can kind of see all of the code. So you can see the usual stuff that you'd see in a Unity project. But the way that you get this code downloaded is there's a little button up here for code, and it gives you this link here. This is the remote repository URL or reference or whatever you want to call it. We're going to copy this right here. And we are making a few assumptions. So the assumptions that we're making is that you have been able to create an account on GitHub. So you want to definitely have your own GitHub account first. You want to have installed Git locally, either in the terminal or with some sort of visual client. And the third assumption is that you already have Unity installed and you have Unity version 2020.325 or somewhere in the 2020.3 downloaded. It doesn't have to be 0.25 exactly. It could be something slightly later or slightly earlier, but ideally around 25. So if you have those three requirements met, so you've got a GitHub account, you've got Git installed, and you've got Unity, then the rest is going to be a walk in the park. If you have issues with any of those three steps, jump in the Discord, ask us some questions, and we'll try and help you as best we can figure that stuff out. So the next thing you want to do is you want to find the directory where you put your games. So I have a directory for my games, which is here in games, and I put all my games in here. So then what you want to do is you want to open this. So I'm going to do my stuff in terminal. You can use Git through a program, but I tend to try and do my stuff in terminal because it gives me more control, more power. So I'm going to open this directory in terminal. And you can see here I'm in the games directory, and I can show you my directory as well. Home, Yanni Boy Games. This is where my stuff is. And if I show you all the folders in here, these are a bunch of other games that I'm working on. Well, that I have worked on at some point or another. It's the usual thing, you know, for every game that you actually work on for a while, you've done 10 prototypes that you're not working on, but it's all fun. So the first Git command we need to use is git clone. And what that basically is saying is I would like to make a copy of a repository that is elsewhere and put it on my computer. And then we've already got this link over here, so we're going to copy that and paste that in here. And that's going to create a folder called editor public, because that's the name of the repo. If I check, I think I already have. I do not. Great. So I can actually just do that to clone the repo. That's all you need, git clone, and then the link from the repository. It's going to clone into it. It's just going to check that I've got access. That's all fine. And it's going to pull the code down. So I think the whole repo is about 60 megabytes. So it's got not much in it so far. And it's a 2D project, so I don't think it'll get particularly huge. So from that point of view,
Zuraith has arrived.
Xcoding, Zuraith, Zachavelli, thanks for the raid. What double raid? What is going on? I don't believe it. I've had like 2 raids. No, I've had 1 raid in my entire history of being on Twitch, and I've got 2 at once. So thanks a lot for that, guys. For those of you watching on YouTube, I am dual streaming to Twitch as well, so that's why I'm getting excited about this. But let's have a look. Who's in the chat? Xcoding, it's so good to see you. How was your stream? Did you have a good time? Zuraith, welcome. Fresh, welcome. Silver J, wasn't in Zach's stream. Kind of forgot while he was. That's fine. 2 raids at the same time. I know. It's good to see you all. Thanks for stopping by and joining in a bit. So a quick what's the word? Quick description of what we're doing today. So I made a video game last year, which is a 2D platforming game where you are a little pirate and you want to get to the treasure chest. But the main purpose of this game is not so much the platforming as it is the level editor. The level editor is basically a tool for making levels, rocket science there. But the cool thing is that you get to make these levels and share them with other players, and then you can play each other's levels and rate them. The idea is to have a tool that game developers or game designers can use to practice their level building skills. And we used this in the Game Dev Field Guide community to do a bit of a competition last year, which was really fun. But the problem with my game was that I'd used a bunch of third-party assets, and so I couldn't open source it. I couldn't share the code with anyone else. And I wanted to build on this project and make it bigger, and I needed help from other people, so I've decided to scrap last year's project and restart, but this time not use any third-party assets that can't be distributed, so that we can share the code publicly on GitHub and everyone can get involved and work on the game together. Yeah, that's the project. We've got the GitHub page, which I can link to in the chat. And I'm just kind of going through, and basically I'm using the stream as a tuition session where I'm going to show someone who has not used GitHub before necessarily how to pull down the game, make changes to it, and share those changes back with the other developers for review if they want to get involved working on this project. And then I'm going to cut up the stream later and make a shorter video out of it and then share it on GitHub so people can watch it. But yeah, so far what we're doing is we have cloned the Git repository from GitHub to my local computer. So basically what's happened is I've now got all of the files from GitHub on my computer. So I can go into editor public, which is the project we've just created. And if I show the files in here, you can see these are all the files that are on GitHub on my computer. And now I can go into the Unity Hub and I can open a project from disk and I can go into my games, and here there is somewhere editor public, which is the one that we've just downloaded. Now I'm not actually going to do that because that would just take a long time, and I've already got the code locally. I don't need to do it multiple times. So instead, I'm just going to open the version that I already had, which is a slightly different name, but it'll work for our purposes. So I'm going to go into editor 2023, which is my current program. Yeah, so that's my project. Cool. So I can open it in Unity, and here is the game project in Unity. So we're going to open the scene that the game starts with, which is the user scene. Yeah, it's quite possible you have a delay on the stream coding. I don't often get a great uptime. My internet in my new address is pretty bad. Hopefully we'll be getting fiber soon, but I expect there to usually be at least a 10-second delay on the stream when people are watching. 2 minutes? Are you serious? Literally 2 minutes? That is unbelievable. I mean, that is very slow. What's going on with my internet? That's slightly better. I'm on wired, I'm not on Wi-Fi. Is the quality of the stream all right? Like, is it a steady video feed or is it quite jerky? I don't know if there's anything I can do about that with a delay. So sorry about that if that's causing issues. 4 minutes. Ugh. That is awful. Right, well, I'll have to look into that for the next stream, but I don't know if there's much I can do about that today, guys. Sorry. So quiet chat, I expect. Oh well. Cool. Where were we at? Cool. So I've now opened the game in Unity. The first thing you do is put your username in. You can then go directly into the level editor, place some tiles, save it. You can see this is the level I've just created. I've got some nice tiles on there. I can edit it, go back in, put some spikes, put my player, put the treasure chest, save it again, screenshot updates. But if I go to test the level, nothing happens. Basically because we've not built that part of the game yet. So one of the first priorities on the GitHub project. So if we have a look at, I've got this project management stuff going on over here. We've got all of the different tasks that I've created so far. If I sort them by priority, our most urgent ticket is the player controller. And so basically it says here, we need to be able to play the game. We should have a player prefab that we can spawn into a level. So that's kind of the first thing that it would be really cool for people to start working on. And so, oh, thanks. These are the LED lights that I've been working with for a while. I've not got the game working on them yet, but you know, in the meantime, we can have some funky lighting going on. The camera is the same one I've always had. Not much has changed there. But yeah, cool. So one of the big things for this project for me personally is that I don't want to be the person who does all of the work on this. Not that I mind doing work, but if I'm the person who's constantly fixing all of the issues and doing all of the work, then it doesn't really give people the opportunity to have a go. So I'm going to do my best to do as little as possible other than encouraging, reviewing code, giving people advice, trying to teach people to achieve the goals. So I'm going to do as little actual coding on this as possible, except for areas that need my expertise with, for instance, the back-end storage and stuff like that. So, you know, from that point of view, so I'm not going to, in this stream, build the player controller and submit it to the game. That would be not helpful. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a start on this particular thing. So I'm going to create a player prefab that will be where the player controller goes, but I'm not actually going to do all of the work. I'm going to let somebody else pick this up and get it done themselves. So the very first thing I'm actually going to do, no, I won't. I'll actually just start. So we've pulled the code down. We are currently, if we look at the terminal and do a git branch command, it tells us we are on the develop branch. So the way the develop branch, I can get rid of master, we don't need that. Cool. So I'm on the develop branch, which means that this is where all of the development work is going to happen. This is where all the testing is going to happen on the game. And when we make a release of the game that we want to share with other people, we will merge that into the main branch. And the main branch is where the release code is going to work. But no one's actually ever going to work on the develop branch directly. All of the code contributions are going to flow into develop. So the first thing I want to do is I want to do a git checkout -b. This one, what I'm doing, this command is going to create a new branch from develop that I can work on and make code changes. So I'm going to call this branch, I'm just going to call it player controller. And now if I do git branch, it tells me I'm on the player controller branch. Perfect. That means when I commit things, I can actually commit them to that branch and I can push them up to the repository and it can get reviewed and it's not going to get mixed in with anybody else's work. So it's just going to go in the right place. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new scene. And it's been such a long time that I don't even know where that is. Watch me code Unity. Watch me not find scene. But there it is. And I'm going to call this player controller. But I'm not going to let it get mixed in with the other scenes. I'm going to create a new folder. Nope, not open containing. Create a new folder, and I'm going to call this not temporary, not development, experimenting. So that's definitely going to tell people this is crazy stuff going on in here. This is not the final game. This is just experimenting with stuff. I'm going to put the player scene in there. I'm going to open it up. Cool. And in the player scene, I'm going to create a player that we can use. Pardon me. And to do that, the way I like to create players is I like to drag in a sprite. So I'm going to look at the art for this game. No, I'm not. I'm going to look at... Where have I got all the artwork? Treasure Hunters here in libraries. Okay, so Captain Clown Nose, that's the name of the asset. Captain Clown Nose. With sword. That sounds fun. Idle sword. Here we go. This is our Captain Clown Nose. Isn't he pretty? Cool. So I'm going to take this sprite and I'm going to drag that into the scene. So it's going to create my player at the right size. Of course, it's Unity and it doesn't do very well with pixel art, so it's created the sprite in a weird way. In fact, I might actually drag some of these into the project, because right now all of the art is in an asset pack, and I kind of like to distinguish between which bits of the asset pack we're using and which bits we're not using. So I might grab Captain Clown Nose, because we will be using him, and I might move that into the project so we know exactly what we're dealing with. So we're going to use Captain Clown Nose with sword, because I like the look of him with the sword. I'm not sure if we're going to have attack animations, but let's just go with that for now. So I'm going to copy that folder, and I'm going to go into the project. So in this particular project, I've got all of the project files in this _project folder. And so the idea behind that is that other things can be doing stuff in the game, but if it's to do with stuff that we're actually building ourselves, it's in one project folder and it doesn't get mixed up with other assets. We're going to go into art, and I'm going to do another folder for sprites. And in here, we're going to paste Captain Clown Nose. Now we can do stuff with these assets and we can make changes to them without spoiling the asset pack. So I'm going to go back and delete this guy. So back into project, art, sprites, Captain Clown Nose, idle sword 1, drag him in, and I'm going to use this opportunity to go onto the sprite, and I'm going to actually just do all of these, because why not? And I'm going to set the filter mode to no filter, and the compression to none. And the pixels per unit, we've not worked that out yet. We'll figure that out. It'll probably be 32, I would imagine. Apply. 64 by 40. We need to do some maths on that and work out. So I'm just going to leave it at this for now, because it's not something that's super important straight away. And I'm going to take this game object, and I'm going to reset the transform for starters, and rename it to player. Pardon me. And I'm going to create a prefab from that, so we can have something that we can spawn into the scene. So where are our prefabs? Let's create a new folder. I really like having folders everywhere. I like things being properly organized. This is going to be a collaboration project, so it's going to become a mess by the end, but that is not a problem. We can always tidy things up. So let's have a look. We are going to have a set of prefabs that are to do with spawning things into the game. So let's do spawnables. Might not be the best name, but that makes sense to me right now. I'm going to put the player in here. We're going to save. And now we have a player. And let's see if this works with our tile placement editor stuff. So if I go into the test scene, this is the scene where we actually play the game and test the game. In here, on the level grid, we have our tile painter, and this is responsible for painting all of the tiles and placing them whenever the game loads. So we've got our player spawn here, which is currently a level start, which we no longer want to use. I'm going to get rid of that. Instead, we are going to use... Where were we? We're going to use a scriptable object for that. And so we've got all of these guys here already. And we should already have one for the player. It's called player spawn. I might rename that at some point. But anyway, so we're going to drag that player spawn in here. Oh. The script isn't liking that. Why is that? So where's our player spawn? Here. Ah, it wants it to be a game object. Nope. We now want it to be an editor tile. So now we can drag... Where is it? Player spawn. Scene is under S. Is that literally how big the delay is? I think that was ages ago. Oh my word. That is a problem if it's taking that long for the chat to update. Right, come on, let's find it. So why is this not working? It still thinks it's a game object. Why? Have we got errors? Errors in the code, so Unity can't compile. Right, what have we got here? Set player spawn. So that's not what we want. So get rid of that. Now Unity can compile. Excellent. Can we drag the player spawn in now? Fantastic. Okay. And if we look at this scriptable object, this is kind of where I glue a lot of stuff together. So if we are looking at the create scene, this is where we are creating levels. You can see up here, I can switch between different tiles to paint. Each one of these is linked to a scriptable object that has various bits on it. It knows, for example, these enemies. I've told it only 10 enemies can be placed of that, only 5 enemies can be placed of that. Infinite ground blocks can be placed. The player goes here, things like that. So there's a lot of information on these. I've got a prefab, an item frame image. The item frame image is what goes in here. This whole thing is called an item frame. So that's what image to show when you're selecting things. Item count, tile, the tile to be actually painted into the tile map, the layer of the tile map to place things on. And so it's kind of where it's kind of one of the building blocks for building the level editor. Third raid? What is going on? Bardicky, thanks for the raid. Very cool of you to stop by. What was your stream about? What were you working on? I'm aware that there's a massive delay on my stream, so you might not be able to hear me for a while. That's a good question, actually. Is the stream better on YouTube? Is there less delay on YouTube? We will see. But anyway, Bardicky, I mean, just tell me about your stream. What were you guys up to? We're building a collaborative project. So this is my first time doing this sort of thing, but I'm basically building a video game on GitHub, completely open sourced, completely open for anyone to collaborate and join in. And this particular stream is I'm kind of making an example of how somebody would come into the game, make a change, and contribute it back to the rest of the world in GitHub. So I'm just in the process. I've just pulled the game down from GitHub. I'm making a quick change, although it was going to be a quick change. It's turned into bug hunting, but it's going to be a quick change, and I'm going to create a pull request, and then you'll be able to see that change on GitHub. But right, so currently we need to just place that prefab that we've just created, this one here, and of course Unity hides it the second I click on it. So right, editor tiles, player spawn. This is my player spawn tile. I'm going to lock that in. I'm going to jump into my prefabs. I'm going to grab my player prefab and drag that in here. And that basically means when this tile is spawned in game, it will spawn that prefab. Now, exit out of that. I just need to check the code. It wasn't previously doing that, so I just need to see how I should go about doing it now properly. So it's not default tiles, paint tiles from file. That seems the right place to be doing this. If we're in the editor scene, we are not in the editor scene, so I'm going to ignore that. If we're not in the editor scene, player win, enemies, moving platforms. Let's just stick something in here for the player spawn. So, if the current level save player spawn is not 0, and the player spawn scriptable object prefab is not null, instantiate the prefab at the spawn coordinate. There's a bit of jiggery pokery making sure the tile is centered up properly, and that should work. I mean, I'll be amazed if it does, fingers crossed, but let's have a go. So let's go into the editor selection screen and have a quick look. Cool. So here we have, let's just delete that one. Let's create a new level. Right. So if we go into test, this is the center of the screen. That's where the camera moves. Eventually the camera is going to jump to the player, but we haven't built that yet. So the center of the camera, that's where I'm going to want to see whether this works. So I'm going to just build a little arch around here so we can test the right position. Yep, that's on screen. So let's put a player prefab in here. So I'm going to put him here in the air. Now it should spawn something that is an image of a guy holding a sword. That's what we're expecting to see if this works. It works! He's too small, but he's there. Excellent. Let's just see if we can fix that sizing. I'm pretty sure from memory that the pixels per unit should be 32 pixels. So if we just have a quick go at that, let's just save this, exit out, idle sword. Let's just set these guys all to 32 pixels per unit. Replay. And let's have a quick look. Yes, that looks about the right size. Cool. So basically what we've done now is we've created a player prefab. It doesn't do anything. He doesn't move. He doesn't collide with anything. There's no gravity. There's literally nothing to him other than he has an image. You can see him on the screen. But this is a starting point, and I think as a starting point, that's pretty good. So the main purpose for the starting point is I want to start something off, and I want somebody else to come in and pick it up and improve it. So hopefully somebody feels like, oh, I can do a player controller, I can do input mapping, I can do animation, I can do collision detection. Someone just going to come in, is going to pick one of those things and do it themselves and contribute the code back, and we'll have, you know, a collaborative project. That is my hope for this. So anyway, I've made the changes. I can save Unity. We're going to jump back into the terminal. And now we're going to use a command called git status. And what this command tells us is it tells us what is going on in Git. So it's showing me a bunch of files here. So it's showing me changes not staged to commit, and it's showing me untracked files. Untracked files are new files that were not previously there. So you can see here, there's a sprites folder because I've added some sprites. There's my spawnables folder because I've added that for my prefab, and my experimenting scene. That's also new. 42 seconds. Has it gotten that much better? That would be good. As long as that's not 42 minutes, Silver, that would be bad. And cool. And so here the changes not staged for commit. What that is that these are files that were previously there, but have been edited. So I can see here I've made a change to the tile painter. I've made a change to the editor test scene, and I've made a change to the player spawner scriptable object. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the differences to these. These are all new things. These are things that didn't exist before. So those can just get added in. We know that that is fine. But with these ones that are changes to existing files, I just want to have a quick look at the changes that I've made and make sure that those are actually changes that I want to keep. To do that, I can either go into my code editor. So I can look at the tile painter and I can see using Git. So here's another Git tool. So this is showing us the same thing we're looking at in the terminal, but inside my editor. So this is what a visual Git tool would be showing you. So we can see here we've also made these changes, and we can see here a breakdown of those changes. So we can see here that the player spawn object used to be a game object. It's now an editor tile scriptable object. I've commented out this set player spawn, and actually I'm going to do more than that because we are now no longer interested in player spawn because we don't need to do this particular bit of code. So I'm going to get rid of that entirely. We no longer need it. And I'm going to get rid of this if statement. I'm going to rewrite it slightly. I'm going to make it, if it is the editor scene, do this. Cool. So I can do the same check for the changes I've made by doing a git diff command in terminal, and that's going to again show me all the changes. So I'm not really interested in looking at the Unity file changes because they're really hard to understand because it's computer garbage. But a script file, a C# file, is one that we can have a look at. So if I do a git diff just on that file, it's going to show me again. I've removed this line and I've added this line. So I've made a change here. Similarly, I've gotten rid of my set player spawn. I'm doing a slightly different spawn now, the way I would with a normal scriptable object tile. And I've gotten rid of that call to set player spawn. So I'm happy with all these changes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do git add, and that's going to add all of the files that I've changed. You can see a few more now. You can actually see these are all of the art files that I've added into the project. So I've got all those art files. I've got the sprites directory. I've got my spawnable player prefab. I've got the changes to the test scene. I've got my experimental scene here. I've got my tile painter change and my editor tile change. So I've got all the changes, and they are all now a bit difficult because there's lots of them. They are all in the category of changes to be committed. And if we have a look in here, it's a similar thing. We've got all of these changes, 101 files. All of these are waiting to be committed. And so what I've told Git to do is stage these files for a commit. And that basically means when I now do a git commit command, that is going to take all of these changes and store them permanently in a commit. And so I'm going to give that commit a name. So the -m parameter means message. And that's basically going to be the message we use for this commit. And so I'm going to say, by Yanni Boy, added new experimental scene for working on player prefab and updated tile spawning to spawn that prefab in game. Now Git confirms that that is all good. So we've got the new commit. It's 101 files changed, 4,400 insertions, 45 deletions. I mean, I've added a bunch of images. So that's giving me a lot of information that's not really relevant to this change. But there we are. And if I do another git status command, it's telling me that there are no changes because we've not made any changes since that commit. Basically, all the changes that we've made to the project are stored. They are, what's the word? Yeah, well, they're committed. We have committed to them. They are there. There's no going back now. And so now the next thing is we've made that commit on our new branch on our local computer. So you can see we're on this branch player controller. got no changes. We can do a git log command. That gives us a list of all the changes. So you can see here, this is our change. It's on the player controller branch. The change previous to that was some refactoring by me. The change previous to that was some working on this file. And this is like a log, a history of all the changes that have been made in the project. But we are one change, one commit ahead of the develop branch. Now, this is all on our computer right now. None of this is on GitHub yet. So if I go back to GitHub and have a look at our branches, we have our develop branch, we have a main branch, we have UML diagrams. That's something that my automation does. We have a GitHub pages branch, again, part of the automation. But there's no branch here for our, what do we call it? Player controller. So what we need to do now is we need to use the git push command, and that will push our branch to GitHub. So basically, so that we can see the changes there. So just doing git push doesn't work because Git doesn't know where you wanted to push it. So Git gives us an example of this is a command. This is a good command to use. So this is git push, and specifically the important thing here is we're doing git push origin player controller. Now, origin is just the default name that Git gives to a remote repository. So if I do git remote verbose, it's telling us that we have this origin repository, which is the Git reference that we added at the start. So when we first cloned the project, we told it get our stuff from GitHub. That's what this origin is referring to. We could change that name. We could call it GitHub. We could add multiple different repositories in here. You could have different versions of the code on different computers all over the place. Most of the time, this is not relevant. Nobody cares. Like, you will have one remote. That remote is probably called origin because that's the default. And that is where your code is pushed and pulled from. But so we could just do a quick commit for git push origin player controller. But what Git was telling us was to use this set upstream parameter here. And that basically means that after we do this one command once, Git will remember that we have set this local branch to push to the origin. And the next time we make a change, we can just type git push and it won't ask us for all the other stuff as well. Just a simple git push will work the next time because we've told it basically remember this instruction. 7 to 8 minutes, Silverjay. That is abysmal. Oh man, I need to get fiber. So at some point in the next few months, I will be getting fiber. They are running the cables. It's just one of those where you just have to wait for it to happen, and eventually it will. In the meantime, it's just a slow chat. Sorry about that. Cool. Right. Anyway, so we've now done our push. Git is very happy with everything. No errors in here. It's even given us this create a pull request for player controller on GitHub by visiting this URL. That's really helpful. I'll be clicking on that in a second. But before I do that, is even if Git didn't tell us this, we are now on the GitHub page, on our branches page. We're going to refresh the page and we can see here we have a new player controller branch. So the push worked. The code is here. If I go back to the main page of the repo, it tells us, oh, look, player controller had recent pushes. Someone's been pushing to it. That's nice. Do you want to create a pull request? So one thing we could do is we could click this button and that would create a pull request for us. The other thing we can do is we can click on this link here in the terminal because GitHub has helpfully told us, hey, you've pushed a new branch. You might want to create a pull request. If I click on that, same thing happens, except in a different browser, and it creates a pull request. So now, what is a pull request, I hear you asking? In 7 to 8 minutes time. Right, but basically, a pull request is, I as a developer am requesting that you as a maintainer of the project pull my code into your project. And actually, what most people will be doing is they'll be comparing across forks. So actually people will be creating their own forks of the repository and doing a cross-fork pull request, but I'm not going to go into that right now. It's not that important. The main thing is that we've got the base branch, which is develop. It'll be that by default. It should only ever be that. We shouldn't be trying to merge branches between other bases, but we're basically trying to put our code from player controller into develop. And you can see here, well, I'll show that in a second. So we're trying to get that branch into develop. It is created a title based on the message in my commit. So in here it says, added a new experimental scene for working on the player prefab. It's quite long, it's quite wordy. We probably don't want this to be the title. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to call it, I'm going to copy all of this, and we are going to do created a starting point for working on the player controller by adding a player prefab. And then I'm going to put that in here. Now in this description you can put as much detail or as little detail as possible. So I'm going to actually make a list of things in here so that whoever comes to read this has as much information as they can possibly get. So I'm going to say I copied, if I can spell, image assets for the player from the library to the art, to the sprites directory. I've also created a new scene where the player prefab can be tested / developed. And I've also updated the tile painter.cs class to spawn the player prefab in game. That's enough for now. You can have a scroll down here. You can kind of see this is where it's going to show you a list of all the commits in your branch. So you can see this is the commit that I've just made. 101 files changed. If you actually scroll down, you can see every one of the 101 files that have been changed. That's going to be mostly image assets because that was at the top. But you can see also here, this is the code that we've changed. So you can see here, that's the change I've made to the prefab. All of that good stuff. And if I create pull request. Bastis, good to see you, buddy. Is that a chicken emoji? Oh, it's Santa. What the? Are you calling me Santa? I do not understand. You're going to have to insult me more creatively. Also, there's like an 8-minute delay on the stream, so see you in 8 minutes when you get this message. Anyway, we have created the player controller prefab. That, of course, we have created the pull request for this code. So if you are coming to this repository on GitHub and you're coming across it and you click on pull requests, you can see there's now a pull request for this change. You click on the pull request, you can see that there's the overview page, which has just got the description of my changes. And it says we can't merge right now because it needs to be reviewed. You can look at the file changes and you can see all the changes that have happened. Nice little directory structure here, so we can kind of collapse the sprites, ignore those. We can see a change to the prefab. We've got a new prefab. This is Unity code. It's not really easy to read. We can see we've got a change to the editor scene. And the change here is we've removed something and we've added something. Again, Unity is hard to read. This is the player spawn attribute, and this is me linking it to a file. It was previously linked to a game object in the scene, and it's now linked to a file in a directory. But again, this sort of stuff is almost impossible to read from the code side. Someone would have to just, you know, go into the game and play it and see how it works to see what's going on here. Cool. Anyway, where we're looking at. So player controller. What is this even? This is our scene. Cool. I'm not going to look through the scene stuff. There's tons in here. But yeah, so basically there's a C# script. We've made some changes. This is the kind of stuff that can be easily reviewed in GitHub. The rest of the stuff, you have to just download and look at it in Unity. Anyway, I'm actually going to do something a little bit else in here. I'm going to go look for our player controller issue. And I can see here, this is issue number 10, which is what this #10 stands for. And in GitHub, you can actually link things by using their shorthand notation. So I'm going to go into the comment here, and I'm going to leave a comment saying, this is related to #10. If I comment that, it's going to say, oh, it's related to, oh, #10, that's a link. It's linking to this player controller issue. If I click on it, I can now see that it was mentioned in creating a starting point for the player controller. So I've now linked these two together, which means that you can see there has been some work on this feature in this pull request. More so than that, I'm going to go into the pull request and I'm going to put a reference into the title of the pull request. Save. I'm going to, being a maintainer, I have the beautiful privilege that I can ignore the requirements for this branch protection. Normally someone would have to come in here, review it, approve it. Actually, I am going to do that. I can go in here, I can go review changes, I can approve them. No, I can't, because I'm the creator of this pull request. Even I cannot approve my own changes. That's good to know. But because I am all-powerful, I am still going to merge this. So, normally when you create a pull request, that is the end of it for you as a developer, because you cannot convince the change to be accepted. Somebody else will have to come and look at it and say, yes, this is a good change. And if everyone agrees, there'll be some discussion maybe. They'll be like, oh, maybe you could change this slightly. Maybe this could be changed slightly. Maybe you could do this better. That's all fine. Once it is at a point where people are happy with it, you can... well, it can be approved and then it can be merged. Now we're going to squash and merge, and I'm just going to make sure that this title goes in here. So that's the right title. And I'm going to confirm it. And now what's going to happen is that change that we've made should now be in the develop branch. So if we have a look at develop, and we look at assets, the most recent change to something inside the assets directory was number 10, created a starting point for the player controller. So that change has now been accepted. It is in the game. It is going to happen. I'm actually going to do something that is slightly even bigger than that. I'm going to take the develop branch and I'm going to merge it into the master branch, because there is this link here, play now, which opens up a build of the game in GitHub. So it's actually automatically building the stuff, not locally with Unity, but on the server where people can play it. Now this particular change does not have the stuff that we've just been working on. So if I click on test, it's not there. It's not spawning the player prefab. There is no player prefab. But if we merge that change into the master branch, into the main branch, we can then actually see it build the game and update it so that people can see that that change has happened. So I'm going to do that locally because it's quicker than doing it in the GitHub UI. But if I jump into Git and do Git, let's have a look. I want to check out develop branch. I want to pull the latest changes because we've made changes to it in GitHub, which means it's not on my local computer. I'm a prophet seeing 7 to 8 minutes into the future. Excellent. Okay, so we've pulled the changes down into our local version. So develop is now up to date. If we check out the main branch, which is our release branch, this is the final version of the game, which we build and share with other people. And I can merge develop into the main branch, and I can push the main branch up to GitHub. Let's have a look. Now we should see that on our main branch, the most recent commit was this, #10 create a new starting point. So that's in there. And if we look at our actions, we can see that it's actually building a workflow from the main branch. If I look at this, that's the generate UML. Is that the right one? Ah, not yet. So that's something else. That's a UML build. That's going to build a code diagram of our dependency tree. We need to build a tag first. So I'm going to create a new tag. A tag is a version of the game that can be shared with other people. So far, we've got version 0.0.1. So I'm going to call this tag 0.0.2. Again, a lot of this isn't relevant to most people working on the game, but I just wanted to kind of show it off because I think this stuff is cool, and at some point, people might enjoy seeing this stuff. It'll be more fun when people actually have proper changes in the game and it's actually running nicely. But yeah, no, so let's have this starting point for the player controller. Normally we'd put detailed release notes in here about all of the changes that have happened since the last release, which could be shared on things like Steam or itch.io or whatever. But it's, it's fine. Let's just do it like that. We're going to push our release. We've got tag 002. It's built all the source code for us. And now if I check the actions, hopefully, zilch. This is the problem with trying to show off cool things. CI template. Oh, it's the naming convention. Why did I go with a stupid naming convention? That's ridiculous. Right, never mind. Go back into tags. In fact, I'm going to do this locally now because the GitHub thing is overkill. Again, everything you can do in GitHub, I can do on my machine as well. So instead, I'm going to do a git tag, and I'm going to call it version 0.0.2 because for some reason I decided that it's important that we use a V rather than just a number. Do a push. And in fact, this push needs to include the tags. Let's do that. Right, now we've built the tag. Version 0.0.2. I'm actually going to delete this one because it's only going to... Oh, can't delete that. Strange. Final try. Hooray! I don't need a version 0.0.1. Definitely don't need that. So cancel this workflow. But here, version 0.0.2. This is going to build the WebGL build and deploy to GitHub pages. Now this is going to probably take 20 minutes, so I'm not going to stick around and watch this build. But basically what this is going to do, this is going to launch a server, install Unity, pull the code down, open the game, make a build for WebGL, export that build, send it to GitHub, and publish it. Ooh, Zachavelli on the really slow burn. It was Christmas when he sent the message, and it'll be New Year before I get it. Anyway, I mean, yeah. So I just wanted to show this off. I really like doing automation stuff and web builds, and for other projects of mine, I'd have like, it building the Linux build and the Windows build and sending those to itch.io. I feel like this is a really big win for independent developers, not having to actually build their game every time in Unity and waste their time. It's just going to happen on the server. It's just going to run the background, and it's going to back everything up for me in a way that I can access it later. Anywho, that was a quick 1 hour and 10 minute guide to how to make a code change in GitHub. I really hope it's going to be easier for other people working on the project, because if everyone has a hard time with this, this is never going to work. But hey ho, we're all learning. We're all trying to get better at this sort of stuff. And I think, this sort of thing, this is like part and parcel of software development in any industry. So if you are, doing game dev maybe as a hobby, but, maybe you would like to get a job at either this or any other software development, knowing and being able to use Git is a big win. And it's only going to help you out longer term later in life. I think it's the industry standard for so many different things. I know Zach tries to use plastic SVM or whatever else Unity is building into it these days, but I like it. So there we are. Anyway, man, I really want to say questions, but do I want to sit here for 10 minutes waiting for the questions to come? That would be sad. So I'm probably going to call it. I'm going to end the stream in 10 minutes when people see this message about ending the stream in 10 minutes. And this is so bad. But yeah, when people start saying goodnight, that's when I know that people have caught up and seen enough. But I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just like chatting about this project and why I think it's really cool and why, I hope it works out. So a quick background on all of the bits that we have ongoing. Obviously, the number one reminder to take away from this is join the Discord. So it's the Game Dev Field Guide Discord. Zachavelli is our glorious leader, and I'm just a lowly mod, but he's given me this project to work on, and I want as many people to work on it as possible. So join the Discord. That's like the first call to action. If you do nothing else, do that, because even if you don't work on this project, that Discord is awesome. Do it. Next things is we have our wiki. So on the wiki, I kind of go into some of the details of why this project. So I've got a page on Editor 2022, like the background from how this game started, and where we're up to now. I've got some game design document stuff. So basically I've kind of gone through and I've kind of written up my ideas for how and why and what. Like I said, all these are my ideas. I am not the boss of this project. I am facilitating this project. So I really want people to kind of come to it and understand it and bring their own ideas and challenge my assumptions. And if we can make a better game because we worked on this as a community, then so be it. Like nothing is written in stone. Everything can be changed. We would just like to get something playable out by Christmas so that we can do another Game Dev Field Guide competition. But other than that, literally just whatever you want to do, talk about it. So the game design document is kind of the background to that. It's I've got some stuff about the overview, which is basically like, what is the game? How does it work? What's the point? I've done an ideal play session, which kind of goes through a couple of different people engaging with it and like what they do, what actions they take, how it helps them get through the game. So that's really good for understanding how the game is supposed to work. What else is there? There is contributor intros. This is really important. So if you like the idea of this and you want to get involved, post a comment on this thread. Basically, this is just like an introduction. Introduce yourself to me and the other people. Give as much or as little information as you want. We don't want people to share everything like passwords, banking, all that. DM me that stuff. Don't post it on GitHub. But just tell us roughly what time zone you're in, how often you can work on stuff, the kind of stuff you'd like to work on, when you're available. And what we'll do is we'll organize a call on the Discord where people kind of get together and chat about it. We can assign some work, that sort of thing. We can't find the right time to have those calls. People don't tell us where they are and what time they can do. So just post a quick little comment on here to tell us, hey, I'd like to get involved. What else have we got? We've got a roadmap. So the roadmap is roughly my idea of certain targets we want to hit. So we've already achieved the initial one. The roadmap, the next milestone is the player controller. We want to have basically a player. We want to be able to basically have a player that we can control and move around the game. After that, we've got a playable game MVP milestone, which should have basically all the features we had last year. So enemies, timer, high score, leaderboards, that sort of stuff. And then after that, it's going to be additional features. So whatever we want, like people will be able to propose their ideas for the game, and they'll get in probably. Like I'm not going to say no to